Tim sends his apologies, but he's got a hospital appointment for Joanne this morning.
So I think we're a bit light on a agenda. So I think the two items we've got are the what's rattling my cage item, and then to replace one of the other items, I had done a webinar on storytelling and data storytelling, not particularly a teach type thing. It was more to get a discussion going. So I said I was quite happy to present that as one, to do that piece as one of the agenda items. So if they're the two items on the agenda, I thought let's kick off with the what's rattling my cage piece. So does anybody have anything which is particularly causing them difficulties or their cage to be rattled this morning?
I've always got something, but I'm aware I also talk first, so.
Oh, that's fine. I think at this stage that's good.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's conceptual really, but we're looking into push versus pull ordering for sort of like food chain supply stuff. And so the thing that's rattling my cage at the moment is how you might use data to help design the prioritization for it's not just ordering processes, but in this example, it's an ordering process where you've kind of got lots of degrees of freedom on both ends. So you've got, if you're trying to predict what, so in the example I'm talking about, you've got customers ordering things and you've got suppliers delivering things, right? And you need to supply the customer and you need to pull from the supplier. So you could go about forecasting what the customer might want, and you can go about forecasting what the supplier can deliver. But there's degrees of freedom on both ends. So do you do a push style process where you say what we've got is what we'll deliver and that's fine? Or would you do a pull style process where you say this is what we need and therefore this is what we have to order so that we can deliver? It's the meshing of differing processes that have differing best practice in prioritization and ways of being built into something that works well. And it's not something I've usually got all the degrees of freedom on one end and I'm starting from a sort of fixed position. So it's a new concept for me to sort of be working from the middle outwards in a way. And I'm not sure how easy it is that is to engage with here, but I was wondering if anybody else had done or experienced something similar and maybe, or a more abstract way, how you can sort of, a good approach for meshing two processes together or two design ideas together. Yeah.
I suspect this is one of these moments where I really do wish Ian Sterling would join, because I suspect he's got more idea than me. I mean, we work more off the push side and have been doing lately, mostly because of supply chain issues. So we were running into issues that actually availability wasn't great. So we were doing a lot of work to work out just what are the most likely substitutes and try to push substitutes. So most of the stuff we've done recently has come at it from that end. We have had a end-to-end supply chain project which is looking at demand forecasting. So we've done them as two separate things. So we're trying to manage what we want from the supply viewpoint via some fairly standard kind of supply modeling, and that the rest of the work has largely been about substitutionability.
Sounds like a very similar sort of, very similar system, to be honest. I expect lots of companies are doing the same thing because you suddenly got these big supply chain issues cropping up, or you know what I'm actually referring to specifically is it's the F&B supply chain for Whitbread. So we've got, I don't know, 1,000 sites, probably hotels and restaurants, and all sorts of line items that we would order that have got varying lead times from 2 days up to 6 months and come in all sorts of sizes and shapes, and you got to store them and it's a really, really complex process. And then the big changes are you've got these massive macro customer changes happening with the weather and COVID and Brexit and health fads and all sorts on one side. And the other side, you've got things like avian flu, meaning suddenly no eggs, or, you know, various supply chain issues due to things in China because they've closed the ports down or whatever. So you've got the possibility of these big obstacles appearing on both ends, and it's how do you construct something that's resilient and dynamic enough to know which end to solve it from. That's sort of the bit that I'm mulling over, but I expect it's a similar thing. I think you're right. I think Ian's probably dealing with a similar thing as well.
Yeah. I think we've probably almost took a view that we can't do, if the suppliers have problems, there's a very limited amount of things we can do, because it's not too easy with a lot of our stuff to switch supplier. So on some of the pet food sides, just there's not that many manufacturers. On certainly some of the stuff we get from China, the sort of dog beds and leads and stuff, again, you could try to get new suppliers, but they're all probably in the same boat. So if we probably can't switch, we've got more chance of being able to switch consumer behavior into actually, can we get people to buy other brands? So we've concentrated on the bit where we can actually probably influence a bit more, but that's been just a very pragmatic decision to try to handle that the best way we can at the minute.
Do you have can site order in your system? Can like a shop manager go, we're running out of this, get some more in?
Yeah, the store managers can do that. I think there's certain limits on what they can do, but they've usually got to. It's usually, if they've got kind of it's slow moving stock items, if they shift, that they can order. So there's some items we don't let them. So I think if I remind, so some of the main
high cost, low volume or whatever.
Yeah. So some stuff we don't, but they within certain parameters they can reorder.
Yeah, I think because there's a behavior, there's a particular behavior that can happen if supply dries up, or even if there's a rumor that supply will dry up.
Yeah,
sites can overorder to protect the loss of their future ordering ability. So they actually end up with a amount of stock at site, which then dries up the network. And it can either be that you then can't deliver to a site who hasn't done that, or that what they've ordered for us is perishable and they don't sell it quick enough to not waste some. And so you've got a supply chain issue with the supplier. You might not be able to find an alternative very easily, but it has all these knock-on effects through the system that you kind of have to model as well if you want to get that last bit of efficiency or reduce wastage or whatever it might be. We're right at the start at the moment, so I don't know how prioritized that will be, but it sounds like you've got something in place, with limit ordering and things like that. Seems quite pragmatic.
Yeah, I mean, most of our limit ordering has been built around the fact that our back office in the stores isn't really very big in most of them.
So they can't afford to.
So we can't afford the space in the back office to do that. You go in most of the stores, and the people have already got stuff shoved in the store colleagues' kind of staff room has got stuff buried under tables and things where they've had to kind of adapt. And then we get occasionally random problems. I did store visits before Christmas, and one of the belters was one store having to reorder because of the amount of stuff that gets eaten by rats because they're next to a Starbucks.
Yeah.
And then we thought, why does it matter you're next to a Starbucks? And seemingly the reason is that Starbucks throw a lot of stuff out that tastes really nice, but is possibly a bit off and can poison things. But cat food in particular contains stuff that actually is basically anti-poison agents. It kind of helps with all sorts of. The rats have figured out if they eat the cat food, they can then go and trough out on the good stuff instead of Starbucks and not die. Which is just really quite bizarre. So they're having to reorder more cat food because They hadn't thought, can you put the cat food somewhere the rats can't reach, but seemingly rats can reach most places.
I think trying to outsmart the rats is probably a losing battle.
The rats are certainly brighter than some of our store colleagues. We've established that.
They've just got
I'd say that,
numbers and time on their side, and they operate
Yeah.
operate in the darkness. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we yeah, it tends to be yeah. It's been a struggle because we're trying to we've been trying to model what we can do with container with deliveries, and we're just starting to look at the whole, because our fleet is partly rented in other people's vans and partly our vans. So we've never really been asked before this year to start to look at fleet optimization, but we're starting to get questions about how do we optimize our fleet.
Is that
which
driver shortage stuff?
Driver shortage,
And fuel
yeah,
price.
yeah, and fuel prices. So there's a little bit of CSR masquerading on the environment stuff in there, but it's mostly actually fuel prices.
What's CSR?
Oh, sorry, corporate social responsibility.
Oh, okay. Green.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there's we're tying some of what we're doing into that, but in reality, it's we're short of drivers. The salaries for haulage drivers, for the ones we employ, are people who were probably being paid on average about 22, 23 grand. About 18 months ago, the salary's probably nudging 40 now.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to be a wagon driver if you can be pestered with it.
Well, 6 months ago, the employment centre near me, they printed one letter per A4 piece of fluorescent paper and stuck it to the window, and it said drivers wanted X per hour.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just that. You just saw it
Yeah.
everywhere. I think
Yeah.
we'll have the same. Whether we don't actually employ that many drivers anymore since we sold Costa, but we nevertheless rely on a huge amount of laundry and a huge amount of F&B. And so the companies that we work with do, and so if their costs go up, are they're going to pass that on. So I think it's affecting everyone really.
Yeah, it's the other thing we've been having to look at with suppliers, because the suppliers are pushing that much cost increase through. We've been having to do some of the substitutionability work just to try to work out actually which brands have we got where. Do we reduce SKUs in stores? Because is there some stuff where we just go, great, if you're going to want to put the price up 30%, actually we're just not going to stock it anymore.
Yeah. I think ours for F&B has been so whereas before you could say I want this amount and they'd say sure, now they're saying no, we'll give you a case or we'll give you nothing because it's not worth the trip, which is fine. But then if you've got, we'll have an item on the menu that's for an event or a one-off. I think the example given was like a barbecue rub.
Oh yeah.
It's on one particular food item, but because it's a powder and you don't actually use that much of it in each dish, the case size is like an enormous sack of the stuff. And so one of those will last like 10 sites for a year or two or whatever. And so we just can't have it in that quantity. It's not so but then they don't want to ship anything smaller or find clever ways to bundle it up with other things, because otherwise it's not worth the petrol for them. So
yeah, I mean, one of the things we've been trying to do is get almost the catchment area where we've got overlapping, on not quite overlapping catchments, but well, some of them are, but where we've got close catchments, we've almost been trying to get the stores into groups where we can go, right, guys, work together a bit better. If one of you has got, if it's a large aquarium, as long as one of the 5 of you stores have got it, it's fine. Because either, frankly, you can send the customer to the other store, or if you need to, get somebody to bloody just run in a car and go pick the bloody aquarium up and fetch it back for them. Because most customers, when we've done it and trialed it, oddly, the customer responds to, actually, if there's a Costa opposite or a Starbucks opposite, just go sit in there for half an hour and we'll send somebody to nick to the store that's 10 miles down the road. We'll be back in an hour. Have you got anything else to do for an hour? the response, instead of it being a bit of a slightly crappy customer service, the idea that somebody would stick somebody in a car to go get something for them has actually just played really well, because it's kind of, oh, right, they're going to a lot of trouble to get me the aquarium or whatever. So it's like, it's actually worked, but I'm not, we can't do it across all stores, because kind of like Inverness.
Across all products, presumably.
Or across all products, yeah.
You've got to make a bit of profit before you can put an hour's labour on it.
Yeah, for an aquarium, it's worth sending somebody for an hour to go pick an aquarium up.
Yeah, yeah.